I like your ass. You're lying, Morgan. Hell no, I like your ass.
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Summer Ibuki Douji. She's a limited 5-star berserker introduced in Arctic Summer World, and the developers really screwed the pooch on this one. And I don't mean in the Gareth sense. No, Ibuki goes in the opposite direction and represents blatant power creep in the attacker arms race. If Summer, and company are quaking in their boots, let's find out why. First off, in Ibuki's toolkit, we have Midsummer Goddess. This is a 3-turn party attack and crit damage buff. It also provides NP gain for Summer mode servants. This category pretty much includes anyone with a real swimsuit. You've got the dedicated Summer servants, and the ones that got swimsuit costumes like Mash and the boys. What did they mean by this? Unlike with Miss Crane and her costume mechanic, I do believe the servants in question need to be wearing their swimsuits in order to count. And unfortunately, quote-unquote swimsuits like Brave Ellie's don't count. You know what does count though? Ibuki herself. And she makes good use out of that NP gain. Ominous foreshadowing. Next in line is Summer Cheerleader. This is a targeted 3-turn arts and buster buff that also reduces cooldowns by 1 turn. Logically, Ibuki is the target for this in most situations, and the idea is that you use all of her other skills first, just in case the fight goes long. However, there are some niche scenarios where you can target others, like in multi-attacker setups. We'll dig a little deeper into this a bit later, but I will warn you off against one thing. A bunch of discussion I read about this skill says it pairs nicely with Arquade, but I don't really see a scenario where you'd run both at the same time. If you're in a position where Summer Cheerleader makes a difference on Arquade, you're already running Double Koyanskaya. Having Ibuki throw in another AoE on top of that doesn't strike me as the sort of thing that would fly in a 90++. Pair your AoEs with single targets if that's your concern. The last of Ibuki's regular skills is Beach Apocalypse. This is a 50% battery. A 50% battery on an AoE Arts Berserker. We've had 50% on Arts Avengers and 1 Buster Berserker, but the developers had been quite reluctant to give that kind of power to an Arts Zerk. And before you squawk about Creamhill, the AoE part is important. Competent Arts AoEs generally get good refund off of standard 3-enemy arrangements, but struggle with irregular waves that have 1 or 2 enemies. This is one of the main things restricting Summer Musashi's applications in 90++ content, and I suspect you've needed to run reserve chargers even in 90+. But Ibuki has the option of just powering through a speed bump with raw charge. This flexibility means that as long as you can pair her with a good single target attacker, very little is outside of your reach. Aside from the battery, we also have Star Income and Star Absorption. Berserkers tend to have abysmal base absorption, so the latter is quite handy. If you fall short of the damage check on a 3-turn clear, a good buster crit might put you back on pace. And against boss encounters, being able to arch crit will give Ibuki a way to leverage her Noble Phantasm even after she exhausts the supply of trash mobs to loop on. Speaking of NPs, hers is Ibuki no Mitama, 8 Surging Waves. This is an AoE arts attack that preemptively purges defensive buffs and reduces crit chance after the hit. Its overcharge is anti-earth damage. This is how the sausage is made. Combined with Ibuki's buff suite and colossal attack stat, 8 Surging Waves is how Ibuki obliterates all opposition and gets the charge to do it all over again next turn. And let's not forget the value of that overcharge effect. Anti-buffs are the bread and butter of the new endgame paradigm, and having one as broad as anti-earth is quite a windfall for a servant that's already quite overtuned. This combination of factors makes it so that you can often just throw Ibuki at a situation and have things work out. Saves you some trouble in the thinking department, quite fitting for a berserker. She's not quite as unconstrained as someone like Arquade when it comes to enemy formations, but you have an absolute wealth of tools to take advantage of her higher damage ceiling. First of all, I'd recommend leveling her Charge of Pen skill. The extra 20% means that, in combination with Beach Apocalypse, Ibuki can provide 70% charge by herself right off the bat. That remaining 30% can be filled by Zhu Fu, for instance, a very available and low econ art support. If you got Ibuki on a fresh account, you should look to exploit that synergy as soon as possible. While Castoria can provide 30% as well, you typically want to use her 20% battery first, since it grants an NP gain effect. This leaves you 10% short. If you're running 2 Castorias, you can just use the other 20%er and waste 10% with the knowledge that your increased efficiency will make up for that. Usually. That's my recommended course of action for the time being, but we will get other solutions down the road. One of my favorites is the Summer Street Mystic Code. This one's coming in next year's summer event and has a pair of 10% charges. Very handy for filling in gaps, but it also plays into Ibuki's capacity for crits. While its single hit evade isn't terribly impressive, Ibuki has to take what she can get on that front. One of her few weaknesses is that she has next to nothing in the way of protection. That won't be an issue in farming, but if you're up against the boss, you should keep one eye on your Castoria's charge bars just in case. One benefit of Ibuki preemptively purging protection is that you only really need to worry about 2 craft essences. If you have it, Black Rail is going to be your bread and butter. It gives her reach, and with the right help, Ibuki won't need starting charge to do her job. The good news is that you could pick it for free with the anniversary ticket, so there's a good chance you have everything you need to use your new Ibuki. Free-to-play Black Rail, free-to-play Zhu, and then you just borrow a Castoria off your friends list. Now there are limits to what a servant can do at NP1, but this combo is going to be more than enough for the early game, assuming you can account for the missing 20% charge. Unfortunately, NP1 servants don't start with enough servant coins to unlock an append skill, which forces you to get Bond 6 for the missing portion. That's one of the big benefits of going for NP2 instead. You shave off a good part of that grind. That said, you can just unlock the Chaldea combat uniform from the Chaldea gate and backline your free Zhuge Liang as a backup charger, whatever gets the job done. But if you were unfortunate enough that you missed out on the CE ticket, keep an eye out for the various 50% starting charge CEs they give out during events. Of these, the most relevant for Ibuki is Ocean Flyer, and lucky for you, it's due for a return down the road. These are the main craft essences, but there are occasional exceptions for event damage CEs and invuln pierce against bosses that have the non-removable version of the effect. For command codes, you can take advantage of Ibuki's star absorption buff by running crit damage. Use what you've got, but there is one that stood out to me for a bit of fuckery. Mirage on the Sea of Sand is coming down the road with the Andromeda Valentine's event. Its combination of NP damage and crit damage makes it a good pick for your quick guard. This lets you layer it in front of either a standard Mighty Chain or just stick it in front of your Noble Phantasm as the situation dictates. If you want to optimize even further, Ibuki is a prime target for Grails, even going the distance to level 120. If my data is correct, Summer Ibuki not only has the highest attack stat in the Berserker class, but the third highest in the game. I'm leaving a little room for doubt because it's shockingly annoying to find a straightforward stat comparison. I've had two separate sources break, so I had to collect the numbers myself this time. But the point is that you can lean into this strength, not to mention that Berserkers get amazing Grail value. That's because of their base damage multiplier. At the risk of oversimplifying, for every 100 points of attack that Ibuki gains on paper, you functionally get 110, and that adds up. And that's before you factor in Berserker class advantage. So if you've taken the plunge and acquired a high NP level, it's well worth taking those final steps. I do have one criticism of Ibuki though. This is Madness Enhancement E. It provides a pathetic 2% buster performance. But get this, she also retains Dragonkin from her Saber form, which gives her 12%. This gives a combined total higher than if she had Madness Enhancement EX. She's clearly cooking the books. Claim a lower Madness Enhancement on your taxes to cheat the feds out of their cut, then either rest in offshore passives? I'm on to you, Ibuki Douji. For another curious passive, there's Core of the Serpent God. This grants 20% buff removal resistance. This isn't a decisive amount of purge resistance, but there are times where you'll just luck out, straight up. Purge resistance is something you normally plan out with swaps and 100% events like breakbar mechanics. But once in a blue moon, Ibuki will just shrug one of these off unassisted. Suffice it to say, Ibuki Douji is really goddamn good. If you don't have a high-end generalist AoE servant, especially in the arts department, you should seriously think about going all in here. But let's say you've been around for a little while and you've accumulated copies of the old art standbys, Space Ishtar, Summer Kama, or Summer Musashi. As for the two Avengers, I can safely say that Ibuki represents blatant power creep. The primary reason why you'd use them over someone like Musashi was that their batteries gave them a high degree of consistency in exchange for lower neutral damage. But that advantage is gone now. Ibuki has both a huge battery and Berserker class advantage, which eats into a lot of their use cases. Now they're still going to have applications for stuff like waves that mix in ruler enemies or Berserker fights, but it's a much smaller piece of the pie. Ibuki ate the pie. But what about our other voracious eater? Summer Musashi is in for a bad time over the next 2 years. She's still usable for generic 3-3x nodes, but between the lack of a battery, the lack of a damaging anti-buff, and Ibuki's firepower, she's going to be collecting dust. But there is a silver lining for her. A bit less than 2 years from now, in the Samurai Remnant crossover, Musashi hits the jackpot. She gets an NP upgrade that not only brings her neutral damage back above Ibuki's, but also adds damage specifically against Saber-class servants. Pretty much straight up double damage. So for anything that's old school loopable, Musashi's gonna have a niche again. But they kept her most notable weakness, the lack of any kind of battery. She needs a lot more babysitting on irregular formations, so don't expect her to usurp Ibuki for general usage. Returning to the multi-core thing for a bit, there's another extremely overtuned Arts Berserker coming next summer, but this time in the single target category. And if the Vlad friends are coping post-Creamhild, you'll need to keep them on a 24/7 watch once Summer Castoria enters the fray. For just a small snippet, Zerktoria has a combined 70% in batteries, 20% of which she can donate freely. This comes with a party-wide NP gain buff, by the way. And remember how Ibuki has a targetable arts buff? If the AoE section of a fight is particularly weak, you can just send that off to Zerktoria instead. Also, they're both Summer Mode servants, so they both get the NP gain from Midsummer Goddess. It's an extremely powerful and pretty much generic combination of Arts Berserkers. With sufficient investment, they'll invalidate a shocking number of encounters. Kinda makes me wish I'd gone deep on Zergtoria instead of Summer Melusine. That banner does have its perks though. Topic for another day. Yo, if you've been watching the video legit until now, check this out. Hey buddy, skipping straight to the end, huh? That's okay, I forgive you. But my Ibuki's asymmetrical ass don't. Summer Ibuki represents blatant and unrepentant power creep over her predecessors. But here's the funny part. This doesn't herald a death spiral, where an assembly line of new, shiny toys invalidate your roster constantly, Fire Emblem Hero style. No, as of this recording, 2 years later on the JP server, I'd say Summer Ibuki Douji is still the best general-purpose AoE attacker in the game. And if their upcoming summer event proves me wrong, I'm going to jump into Da Vinci's Mana Prism grinder. If you don't have any sunk costs to keep you up at night, I'd wholeheartedly recommend blowing everything to max her out. Once you take care of your strategic needs with Lady Avalon and Summer Scotty anyway. If you're already deep into Space Ishtar Summer Kama though, look, you can stay the course, but the game will make you work for it in the team building department. So brace yourselves, and get really familiar with your roster's anti-buffs going forward. With all that said, thanks for watching lads. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me on twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every weekend, usually Friday through Sunday at 3 PM Pacific time. This video was supposed to come out yesterday so I could announce my NP6 Ibuki roll stream, but that didn't pan out. If you missed it, there's an archive over on Twitch, and I'll be posting it to the stream channel as well, both linked in the description. This Wednesday though, I'll be doing an end of the month special where I get up to more gacha degeneracy, and hopefully get Ibuki to 120 at last. You won't want to miss it, so stop on by and say hi. See you there.